Shadows of the Clinic, A Night Watchman's Nightmare. 1. A quiet start. A few years ago, I worked as a night security guard at a small private clinic. It was the kind of place you drive past without noticing, tucked away in a quiet, wooded area on the outskirts of town. During the day, it was bustling with patients and staff. At night, though, it felt like an entirely different place. And that's when I learned just how different it really was. It was a cold winter night, and my shift had started at 10 p.m. My routine was simple: monitor the security cameras, patrol the hallways every hour, and make sure the building was locked up tight. Most nights were quiet, almost boring. I'd bring a book or watch movies on my phone to pass the time. But this night was different. I didn't know it yet, but by the end of my shift, my view of reality would be changed forever. The first few hours passed uneventfully. The clinic was dead silent, except for the occasional hum of the heating system. I just finished my midnight patrol and returned to the security office to check the monitors when I noticed something odd. One of the cameras, the one covering the storage wing, was flickering. It wasn't unusual for the old system to glitch, so I made a note to report it in the morning. 2. The glitch. As I stared at the flickering screen, I thought I saw something move. It was quick, just a shadow darting across the hallway. I rewound the footage, but the camera glitched again at the exact same moment. Frustrated, I brushed it off. I figured it was probably just my imagination or a trick of the faulty camera. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. At around 1:30 a.m., I decided to do another patrol. Grabbing my flashlight, I made my way through the main corridor, checking doors and windows as I went. Everything seemed normal at first. The patient rooms were empty, the offices locked, and the equipment room was as it should be. But as I entered the storage wing, that uneasy feeling returned. The air was colder here, and there was a faint metallic smell I hadn't noticed before. It reminded me of blood, though I told myself it was probably just cleaning chemicals. 3. The first encounter. I was halfway down the hallway when I heard it, soft, deliberate footsteps behind me. I stopped and turned, shining my flashlight into the darkness. Nothing. The hallway was empty. My pulse quickened as I stood there, listening. The footsteps stopped as soon as I did, but the sound lingered in my mind. "Hello? Is someone there?" I called out, my voice echoing off the walls. No response. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was scared. I'd worked enough night shifts to know the building's usual creaks and groans, and this wasn't one of them. Still, I convinced myself it was nothing and continued my patrol, though I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When I reached the end of the hallway, I heard it again. Footsteps, louder this time, and unmistakably coming from behind me. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I spun around, but there was still no one there. That's when I saw it. A shadow. It wasn't like a normal shadow. It wasn't cast by my flashlight or any of the overhead lights. It was just there, hovering in the middle of the hallway. It had no clear shape, but it was tall, impossibly tall, and unnaturally dark. The edges seemed to ripple, like smoke or heat waves, and it was moving. I froze, unable to look away. The shadow didn't come closer, but I could feel it watching me. I can't explain how I knew, but I was certain it was aware of me. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off the thing. When I reached the corner, I turned and ran as fast as I could back to the security office. 4. Time lost. Slamming the door shut behind me, I locked it and leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold my flashlight. I checked the cameras, but everything looked normal. The storage wing was empty, and the shadow was gone. Then I glanced at the clock on the wall, and my stomach dropped. It was 2:37 a.m. I could have sworn the whole encounter lasted no more than 10 minutes, but somehow an entire hour had passed. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I'd lost track of time, or maybe the clock was wrong. But deep down, I knew something was very, very wrong. The tapping. I spent the next hour glued to the monitors, jumping at every flicker and movement. The building was eerily quiet, but the unease in my chest only grew stronger. At 3:45 a.m., I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. a soft tapping on the security office door. It was slow and deliberate, like someone was gently knocking. I stared at the door, my heart pounding. There was no way anyone could be there. The clinic was locked, and I hadn't seen anyone enter or leave all night. The tapping continued, growing louder with each knock. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice shaking. No response. The tapping stopped suddenly, leaving me in deafening silence. I waited for what felt like an eternity before I finally worked up the courage to open the door. Flashlight in hand, I swung it open, but the hallway was empty. The metallic smell was stronger now, almost overpowering. I backed into the office and locked the door again, determined to stay there until morning. 6. More than one. At around 4:15 a.m., the monitors began glitching again. This time it wasn't just one camera. All of them flickered, static filling the screens. Then for a brief moment, they came back online, and what I saw made my blood turn to ice. The shadow was back, but it wasn't alone. There were 3 of them now, gliding silently through the storage wing. They moved in unison, their forms rippling like water. I watched in horror as they stopped in front of the camera, almost as if they knew I was watching. Then the screens went black. A loud bang echoed through the building, followed by the unmistakable sound of a door creaking open. I grabbed my phone and dialed the police, stammering out an explanation as best I could. The dispatcher said they'd send someone over, but it would take at least 20 minutes. I wasn't sure I had that long. 7. The police arrive. When the officers arrived, they found me huddled in the security office, clutching my flashlight like a lifeline. I explained what had happened, but I could tell they didn't believe me. They did a sweep of the building and found nothing unusual, though one of them commented on the metallic smell. They chalked it up to a maintenance issue and left. But their skepticism didn't surprise me. I wasn't even sure I believed myself. 8. The hidden room. After the police left, I decided I couldn't let the shadows win. My curiosity outweighed my fear. Armed with a crowbar and a desperate need for answers, I went back to the storage wing. That's when I noticed something strange. The floor panels near the end of the hallway didn't align properly. I pried them open and uncovered a trapdoor leading to a hidden basement room. The room was small and cold, with walls covered in strange symbols drawn in what looked like dried blood. In the center was a rusted hospital bed, restraint still attached. The air was suffocating, and I could hear faint whispers, though no one else was there. Something terrible had happened in this room, and I knew it was connected to the shadows. 9. The ritual. On the floor, I found an old journal. The entries described experiments on patients, attempts to separate light from darkness in human souls. The final entry warned that the shadows were hungry and bound to the building. As I read, I felt a sudden cold breath on my neck. I spun around, but the room was empty. Realizing I had to destroy whatever tethered the shadows to this place, I set the journal on fire and left the room. As the flames consumed the book, the whispers grew louder, turning into anguished screams. I ran back upstairs, the shadows chasing me. They were furious, but I felt a strange strength, like the fire had weakened them. 10. The chase. The shadows didn't let up. They swarmed through the hallways, their shapes growing larger, merging into a single colossal figure. It slammed against the walls, shattering glass and overturning furniture as I sprinted toward the front door. The air was heavy, almost unbreathable, and every step felt like wading through quicksand. I threw open the clinic door and ran into the freezing night air, but the shadows followed. They stretched out into the parking lot, their forms twisting unnaturally under the moonlight. I barely made it to my car before one of the shadows reached out, its dark tendrils grazing the window. 11th, escape and a terrifying mark. When I woke up, I was outside the clinic, lying on the frozen ground. My car keys were clutched in my hand, but I didn't remember how I'd gotten there. Shakily, I stood and noticed something horrifying, a black hand-shaped mark on my arm, as though something had burned me. It stung to the touch but faded after a few days, leaving no trace behind. But I knew it had been real. The shadows had touched me. 12. The clinic burns. A few months later, I heard on the news that the clinic had burned down in a mysterious fire. No one was hurt, but the cause was never determined. Part of me felt relieved, like the shadows had been destroyed along with the building. But another part of me wondered if they had simply moved on to another place, waiting for someone else to find them. 13. A warning. Left behind. Weeks after the fire, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a photograph of the burned clinic, but in the ruins, I could see faint outlines of the shadows. Scrawled on the back of the photo were the words, "They are not gone." 14. The dreams begin. Since then, I've been plagued by dreams. In them, I'm back in the clinic, running endlessly through dark hallways as the shadows chase me. Sometimes I wake up with the smell of burning in my nose, or the faint sensation of cold hands on my skin. I fear that I'm still connected to whatever was in that building. 15th, a final plea. I don't know if the shadows will ever truly leave me, or if they'll come for me again. But if you ever find yourself working alone at night, listen to your instincts. Pay attention to the things you think you see in the dark. And if you feel like you're being watched, leave. Don't wait for the shadows to catch you, because they will.